Okay, here we are. We're back.
Hello.
Welcome to Don't Miss This. This is take 2, everybody. It
We
got
started
better
with a
halfway
disaster.
through.
We started with a disaster. So, welcome. For those of you who don't know, we've already recorded one other beginning. I'm David Butler.
I'm Emily Freeman.
This is Don't Miss This. We are doing today Matthew 13. It's also Luke 8 and 13 also. It is a parable day.
Yep, all the parables, which we love and what we want to do.
just some.
No, we love all of them.
I know, I mean, like, it's not all the parables.
Oh.
It's just
I was like, which parables don't you like?
the tears.
This is going to be an irresponsible one because this is already take 2 and we're doing not our best job. Okay, what we want to do with you is walk through how we love to learn about the parables. And in order to do that, we want to tell you a little bit about what we love about why Jesus taught in parables. So we're going to start out, first of all, with the Greek translation of the word parable, which tells us it was a placing beside. So it's a side-by-side comparison of something, and also means an illustration. And that's my favorite part of the definition is the fact that it was actually an illustration. And as I thought about that many years ago as I was teaching it, I thought if this really is supposed to be an illustration, we are probably going to learn more about the parable if we actually illustrate it out. I love that Jesus uses this form of teaching. I feel like this form of teaching is for those of us who are visual learners. I am that.
Me too.
I love to see things out in front of me as I go. And so we really want you to have that experience today. So before we even go any farther, we want to make sure either you have a study sheet like this. If you don't have a study sheet, will you just go push pause? We want everyone to push pause for a second. Go get a piece of paper for every person who's watching the video. You're going to want colored pencils or crayons, or don't worry, if you're at my house, everyone's just going to have a pencil or a black pen, whatever we can find in the pencil drawer. Any of those things are going to work. You want to come back downstairs, or wherever you watch, we're downstairs. You want to come back to the video when you have all that paper. So we're going to let you push pause, you go gather everything you need, and then come back.
Welcome back.
Okay, good job.
One of the things we love also about the fact that it's an illustration is Jesus paints a picture of it, and there are different feelings and experiences that you can have when you see something play out. So even if you're drawing it or if you're just picturing it in your mind, it's designed for you to just see it and just watch this play out. And there's different feelings and emotions that can come when you put like people or experiences on top of gospel truths, right? Let it just play itself out.
Okay, so as you get started, what you want is you are going to want, see these squares? You want 3 rows with 4 squares in each row, okay? We're going to start in the top row right here. And what's going to happen is we're going to read this parable to you. As we read, you are going to draw the details. So line number 1, it's all about the details. It's all about what you're seeing. You want to capture every single thing you see in illustration on paper. So these boxes right here.
And there's 4 of them because in this parable there are 4 different types of soil. And that's why there are 4 different boxes.
Good, and let's talk about this. This is often called the parable of the sower. But you like to call it?
The parable of the soil. And that's because the sower is the same in all 4 types of soils. Like the thing that's different is the actual like piece of ground that the seed goes in. And Emily was saying earlier, I like this, that the seeds are good in every single one of these. It's the soil that they land in. And if you're from the South, this actually works best because I think the soil represents people's souls. So if you say it with a Southern accent, you just don't even know. You're like, this is the parable of the souls.
Okay.
Like, am I saying dirt or soul? We don't even know.
We don't know. But you're making it sound like only people in the South have good souls.
No, what I'm saying is soil and soul sound the same in the South, you know?
Okay,
So
I
what's
wanted
this,
to
you're
be
like, what's
from
this
the
about? This is about the souls. It's like, what, dirt or people? It's the same. Both.
It's about
That's
both.
what's so good.
All right, good job. So I'm going to be the reader. This is going to be so fun, everyone.
And I'm the drawer.
I'm the reader, and he's
The
going to
worst
be the
piece of
drawer.
chalk.
With the worst piece of chalk in the
It's
house.
fine.
I don't know why.
That'll be fine.
Okay, so we're going to start out in chapter 13, verse 3. Is everybody ready? Everyone has their paper. You all have whatever you're coloring with. It starts out like this. Behold, a sower went forth to sow.
Okay, here he is going forth.
See how fun this is going to be?
He's got the seeds.
Okay, and the seeds are going to go everywhere. This is his whole field.
All in the field.
Okay, all the field.
He's going all the places.
And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside. This is going to be your wayside box. Some fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and and devoured them up.
And they're eating them.
I hope that's a really mean bird, like crow.
It is. Look at its beak.
Okay, the second one, some fell on stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched because they had no root. And they withered away. Should they just lay dead on the ground?
Yeah, that one's laying dead.
Okay. Now the next one, some fell among thorns. You know what those are? We call them pokies. They're those things that hurt your feet when you walk without your shoes on. And then those thorns grew up and choked them. Oh. That is what happened. But the last ones, where's the good seeds?
Here.
No, they're getting choked.
Oh yeah, they're trying to grow.
Okay.
They got choked.
On the last one, they fell on good ground. Oh, that's very nicely hoed. And they grew, and they brought forth fruit. This is going to be fun. Some 100-fold. Okay, some 60-fold. Some 30-fold. Okay, there's all of them. And then he says this. This is what he loves to say when he tells a parable. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. Or in other words, riddle me this.
Yeah, I have a message. I had an intention. This wasn't just story time. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay, now, we learned this, and I love this. In order to understand a parable really well, you have to look at it the way the first hearers of the parable would have heard it.
So there are things in their culture and their customs that they would have known about. This is where like a Bible commentary is really helpful, or things like that, because it's like, wait, what would they have known? What kind of birds? What kind of weeds? Like those types of things are really helpful in a parable.
Yep. So we are going to walk you through some of what they would have known about these things. Okay. The first one's going to be the wayside. So you're looking for here the culture, the customs, the area. What was Jerusalem like? In these days, the fields were everywhere. They touched each other. In our time, every farmer has his own field. It's usually fenced in. In that time, every piece of ground that wasn't being used would have been
farm field, yeah.
And people would walk around the edges. Okay, that's the wayside. Because people were walking on it all the time, it became really hard and packed down. So even though it was that farmer's field, right, it was the sower's ground, even if he put his seed there,
they would have been kicked up. It would have been
kicked up, and the ground was too hard. It would either be scattered or it just would never be able to take root. And they would have known.
Yeah.
They would have known there were those parts in a field that would have had those places.
And birds knew which spaces they were going to get free food. You know what I mean? And so they were accustomed to that happening. And so everybody knows if you put seeds on the wayside, the birds are going to come. The people, an agricultural society, would have known that when they heard it.
Okay, the second one he tells us about is the rocks. A field full of rocks. Now, if you live in Lehigh where we do, you know what this looks like in your garden because you are taking rocks out all the time. In Jerusalem, it's not talking about what we think with those little rocks that you just pull out and put in your garbage can every time they rise to the surface. This is talking about what would happen is there would be big rocks like that would take up a whole field. But as the dirt blew, it would blow on top of that rocky plain, and there would be a little bit of dirt there.
Yeah.
And plants could actually go there, and they could get started. there.
So at first glance, it looks like it's a really good spot for a seed to grow, when in reality, it's not, because there's no place for there to be depth.
And because the rock is so close to the surface, even though the roots start to grow, they can't go anywhere. And then when the sun comes and the sun is so hot, it's going to bake that rock. And they would have known that. It would just bake the rock, and everything on top of it is going to die.
Just burn from underneath.
Okay, the thorns, we're going to talk about a little bit later again. But when you are planting in a big field, you always have the worry of what has been growing there before that would be a weed of any sort. So this would be the wheat and the tares. It would be that preparing of the field beforehand. Anyone who has dandelions that grow in your grass, you know exactly what this is.
It's they're just going to come back next year.
It's managing all of whatever is the weed that is in your area. So in this area, the weed was called a thorn. It would have been those little prickly things that when it hit the ground, it's going to grow up, and then it's going to choke out any crop that tries to grow. It would just overcome it. Okay, that'd be the third one. And then the last one we know is just that is the ground everybody wants. It's the ground that is prepped, it's prepared, it's been plowed, the soil is good, it's ready to go, and you just put the seeds in there, and what's going to happen to the seed?
They're going to grow and provide increase. It's the whole reason that you're planting in the first place. Like, why are you preparing? Why are you picking a good spot? Well, this is the way you're going to survive. Like, you can't live unless you first created soil or ground like this. So this is just their mentality. That's what we're talking about for like the first listeners. What would they have known, right? This isn't just like let's just have a garden because President Kimball told us to. This is like this is survival. This is your life. Like this is a life or death issue that he's talking about, which is interesting because you want to ask yourself with parables, why is he telling it in the first place? Us, we think backyard garden. They are thinking, this is everything. He is saying, like, whatever this is about means your life depends on it.
And it's so interesting, too, because generally when we look at a parable, he will talk about a tangible, temporal situation that we can see and visualize, and we understand what's happening. But there's always an underlying spiritual thing. So we've talked really well about farming and seeds and stony ground and all of these things. But once you get to this next layer, you have to start asking yourself, what is the spiritual application? Now that I know, I have the details, and I know what the first listeners would have understood about the details, now becomes the meaning of the parable. And when I look at that from a spiritual application, what is the Lord trying to tell me? Now, something that might be fun for you to do is to go through yourself and figure this out with your family. Like, push pause again for a second. Go through and write down what you think the spiritual lesson is for all of these. When I teach seminary, I always do that. I stop right now. I have everybody figure it out. The beauty of this, and I love that it's the first parable that we really get into, because what he does is he's going to give the answer sheet, right? He's going to give us the key. He now is going to go through and say, I'm going to fill in these 3 boxes for you. But it's fun to try it by yourself and just see how good are you at riddling a parable? How good are you at uncovering it? Because
the rest of them, most of them, he doesn't give a reason for it. He wants you, and at the end we'll talk about maybe why he does that. But this is one of the only spots where he says, "Let me help you walk through it.
Let me show you what happens." So, if you want to push pause for a second and go through with your family and try and see what you think it means, then you're going to come back. Do you want to welcome everyone back again?
Okay. Welcome back.
Okay, awesome. And now we are going to go to 13, verse 18. And he says this.
Chapter 13, verse 18.
Chapter 13, verse 18. Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. And now is going to come the interpretation. And you might want to write that.
I just realized it's Jesus who calls it the parable of the sower, and I renamed it.
Well,
that's fine.
He likes you, so it's okay. So he says this: when anyone heareth the word of the kingdom and understand it not. So
so we just learned what the seed was in that verse.
The seed is the word.
The word of the kingdom.
And the wayside is people who don't hear it.
Right.
Okay, so now we're going to learn 3 things right now. The seed is the word. The wayside is the people who don't hear the word. Like the word is being given, right? It's being given, but these are people who don't receive it at all. They want nothing to do with it. And
or him, receive him, right? Because it's a message about him.
What's going to happen is birds are going to come, and he tells us, then cometh the wicked one, and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which received seed by the wayside. So the bird becomes the wicked one, Satan, whatever. And you love that the fields now become not fields, but somebody's heart.
Yeah, or soul.
So we've learned four things now, right off the bat. The field is your heart. What was sown in your heart. The bird is Satan. You have the seed, which is the word. And then the first people are the people who don't receive it at all. Okay, but he that receiveth the seed into stony places, the same is he that hears the word. And this is interesting. He actually receives it with joy. Like he's totally open to taking the seed in. But he doesn't let it root in himself. So it endures for a minute. But when tribulation or persecution or they become offended, then...
That's the son, is the tribulation, offense.
Persecuted, then that seed is not going to grow. Okay, that's the second type of person. The third one is he that receives the seed among the thorns. And he hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word. So instead of holding on to spiritual things, this is a person who holds on to worldly things. The cares of the world are what prevents the seed from being able to grow. And then the last one is he that receives seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word, I'll trade you places, and understands it, and bears fruit, and brings forth, right? This person has experiences an increase from the word. And it'd be interesting to go through and just talk about probably at different times in our life, each of us has been at a different place of this. There are times when we feel the cares of the world taking over our ability to hear the word. Right. To plant the word, to be able to have the word in our life. Same with tribulation and persecution and those things where you're just, it is that fight. What does your heart look like? What does your soul look like? How are we preparing to be able to receive the word? Because that becomes the important part of this parable is how are we going to take it in? How is it going to become part of us? And finding out this application is important, but there's one more step where then we really do have to say to ourselves, what does this look like in my life? What do I learn from this parable that I could use going forth from here? And for me, looking at it, I think to myself, I love the scriptures. I really do love them. I say that over and over again, and I really do. I can remember one time we were in Boston. It was 4 a.m, and the fire alarm went off in this hotel Greg and I were in. And we jumped out of bed. It was so loud. It scared you so bad because you know how you wake up in a hotel and you don't even know where you are to begin with anyways. And this fire alarm is blaring, and we jump up and went to go out, and I grabbed my scriptures, and we were in our pajamas and started walking out, and Greg was like, "What are you doing?" And he was a little worried if I was fully awake, because sometimes I'm not in the middle of the night, let's just be honest. But I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I can't bear to lose these, right? I love these so much. If I had to choose one thing to take out besides my children, it would be my scriptures. I love them. But even though I love them, and I do love them, but I find myself in these places weekly, right? On the daily. Whatever is going on in life, that is what is happening here. And it's almost as if he's saying to us, you have to be intentional. You have to be deliberate. This preparing of ground, preparing to receive the word, This requires a decision and intention to be able to be ready to receive that word. And maybe it's worth talking about, what does that look like for you? What does that look like for your family? Where is that fitting right now in your life and in your world?
And I see it and I think about the fact that, remember, this was a life or death experience for them. Like, Jesus is comparing it to something that, and you can survive off of last year's, but eventually there comes a time where you're just like, if I don't have that nourishment from him, I'm not going to make it. Like, this is not him saying study or else. He's like, you need this. You need me, right? So prepare that heart for me to come in and give increase, right? One thing that's neat about that increase, by the way, is earlier when we were talking about this parable, we were like, why does he say 30, 60, and 100? And we don't know. One of the things we thought of is there will just be increase. Like, sometimes you will have an increase in the spirit that will be like a 30, sometimes 100. The soil was the same, the sower was the same. All those things just happen, but
here's the beauty, though. There's never a decrease.
Right, exactly. There's just always going to be an increase. But I was just going to say, that's a good practice as you go through parables, to stop and ask. I had a friend who texted me last night. He's like, hey, and this story, why does he bring up this and this? And that's a great scripture study skill, to ask questions. Like, why, why a bird? Why Stony? Why whatever?
Yes.
It's just a great, it helps you get, just to the bottom of it. Should we talk about the parables at the bottom?
No, let's do this first.
Okay.
And then let's do the parables at the bottom.
We'll do the parables at the bottom as a bonus, but if you go to Matthew 13:15, this is the answer to Jesus' question. To the disciples' question when they said, why do you speak in parables? And this is something that I love, because you'll see these words that he moves through in here, halfway through the verse, right?
And we're going to be in 15, but I love when he says in 13, this is why I speak to them in parables, because they seeing, see not, and hearing, hear not. And it's so interesting to think about that it is people who could see, they could, but for some reason they don't. And that same with the hearing, and they hear not. And we've got right now my grandson living at the house right now, and he is just learning that sometimes he'll hear a sound that he hasn't heard before. And it is so cute. None of my kids ever did this, but he'll point to his ear to see if I hear that what he's hearing. And he's not a big talker. He's just quiet. But he'll walk up to me and do this of, do you hear? And then I'll take him to where the sound is coming from and say, this is what it is. This is what's making the sound. But it is so cute and tender to watch him be like, I hear a noise. And point to his ear. Do you hear? Where is the noise coming from? And it's almost as if that's what Jesus was saying.
Yeah, have that childlike curiosity of when you see it and when you hear it, that you actually want to see and hear what it is.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Lead me to that. And he puts you through a process in 15. He says they see with their eyes, they hear with their ears, they understand with their heart. Isn't that interesting that it moves down into the heart and should be converted? And converted there is a word that actually means to love and to worship. So why he's speaking in parables is it causes you to stop. It makes you think. It makes you ask the questions. And all of that is just a process that's leading you closer to him. You're just spending time, you're thinking, you're asking, and that just working through that process. It's not, God's like, I don't want to be Wikipedia. I don't want to just give you the answers. I want you to move and search through it.
And you love that it is this movement, right? You're going to see it first. You're going to read the words first, right?
Right.
Then you're going to hear the words, right? Maybe you're going to go through it a second time. And then they're going to sink into your heart, right? It's this, you're just going through this process of this pondering, of learning, of letting it sink in.
And the question is this with every single parable. What here is leading you to love and worship Jesus Christ? There's something in every parable that is going to lead you to love and worship.
And then my favorite
So what
word.
is that? And then he says,
and I will heal you. Right? I will heal them. The parables can heal us. which is so interesting to think about that. That's the power of the parable, is it has this effect of being able to
because
heal
it draws
in
you to him,
Yeah.
right? It's just like he's like, let my words, let my power heal you.
And have you ever had that experience before where that really has happened? Where you're trying to learn a life lesson and you get into a parable and you start learning it, and the more you go in and the more you learn, the more you just love what you are learning. And one of those that is true for both of us is the prodigal son. When we get to the prodigal son, that will be 5 hours. Everyone.
Yeah, that's a special. Don't miss this edition.
Through there, that a parable is something that you probably just don't read once. That you're going to go back to and back to and back to, and it is in the going back that sinking in happens, and then that conversion happens, and then you become healed in that place in your life, right? You receive that understanding of who he is.
Right. And what's interesting is as we're like working through this, I'm thinking to myself right now, this parable does not lead me to love and worship him, which means there's something I think I'm missing.
Okay,
Isn't that so interesting?
Yes,
because
that
I'm like,
is
what
so
am I
good.
missing from this? Because it's not one of my favorites.
Yeah.
You know, like prodigal son. If my hotel was burning down, I would just rip out Luke 15 and take it, because I love it that much. And so it's like, what is it in here that I need to learn more and have? And so it's actually making me excited to go study this a little bit more,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But what awesome. I'm so glad I don't know, because it leaves that open for all of us to try
And it is so fun. It is like a riddle. For any of those of you who love those riddles, when your kids are like, let me tell you about this. What is the one that it's black and white and red all over, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love it when those things happen, that you're going to go through each of those moments. And that's what these are for me. That I'm like, what is the underlying message here that is going to be life-changing, that is going to be healing, that is going to make me want to love that page of my scriptures. So as we end, what we want to do is just go through and talk about, at the bottom of the page, there are these parables that are left, and you might want to get your piece of paper and do just the same thing again as you're going to go through and read them.
These are a lot shorter. They're just little ones.
So short. Some of them are just a verse or 2 verses, and
But maybe just a quick thought on each of the 5.
Yeah, we just want to tell you one of our favorite parts that we actually don't want you to miss as you're going through. So I'm going to go back into Matthew 13. And which one do we want to start with? Oh, the wheat and the tares.
The wheat and the tares.
Okay, the wheat and the tares is so fun. Here's what you want to know about the wheat and the tares. When I was in Jerusalem, we actually went to a field that had wheat and tares. I'm going to try and bring these right up here where you can see them. And here is what is so interesting about these. Look how similar they look to each other. They're about the same color. They're about the same size. When they grow, they're the same height. That they would grow. The only difference is one has fruit and one doesn't have fruit. One is just grass. And these are what would choke out. It's like doing it in a mirror. These are what would choke out this fruit, right? And as you're talking about the wheat and the tares, sometimes it's fun to just look at. That is how similar they were. That is how hard it would have been as they were growing up. It wasn't until the end, right? It wasn't until the good ground that the fruit comes, and you would be able to tell which is which. So that might be something fun that you want to look at, is how similar are the wheat and the tares. I'm going to just show the Instagram people.
Okay.
And you can start the next one.
Yeah, and something I love about wheat and tares too is it's not until the end that the fruit comes. And so sometimes we'll label a person as a wheat, or more often we'll label somebody as a tare. And it's like we don't actually know. There needs to be some time there, for that to happen. Are you going to do the mustard one? Am I the mustard?
No, I do the
You're
mustard.
the mustard.
Should I do it right now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do mine right now too. I'm going to do the mustard seed. The mustard seed is found in
Verse 31 and 32.
Okay, 31 and 32. We talk a lot about this grain of mustard seed, which is so tiny, and then how it grows into this great big tree. A lot of times we compare it to faith. All of those are really good lessons. There's one more lesson that you don't want to miss that we often do. I love that these final parables, all of them start with the kingdom of heaven could be likened to. And in my scriptures, I wrote down just heaven is. or steps of preparing for heaven, what heaven's going to look like. That's what he's trying to show you here. And this is one of my favorite ones. He talks about this little seed that is going to turn into this big tree. And then there's this one line that says, so that the birds of the air can come and lodge in the branches thereof. And if you know anything about mustard seed, you know it is huge. It is so huge. It grows into a great big tree with branches that are big enough for everyone.
Yeah.
And that is the message of that parable, is the most beautiful part isn't the small and the big. The beautiful part is all of the birds that are going to be welcome.
Room for everyone.
Yep. Room for everyone.
You've got two parables right next to each other. The merchant man in 44, a treasure hidden in a field. And then in 45, it's a pearl, a merchant that's looking for a costly pearl. And one thing I just want to point out there is that sometimes, like the treasure in the field, you stumble upon the treasure. And sometimes there are people who are out looking for that pearl. And I think that's kind of neat, that some people will stumble upon truth, they'll stumble upon Jesus, and some people are out looking for something in their life when they eventually find him.
And you love that neither one is wrong, right?
Right.
Both, the kingdom of heaven is going to welcome both. However you got there, they are going to welcome you there. And you love that both find it, right? The word found is in both of those, which is awesome. The last one we're going to talk about is in verse 47, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net. This is an interesting parable because it's going to teach two of the parables are going to be retaught. The first one is it's going to be cast into the sea, and it's going to gather of every kind. So again, we're having that mustard seed principle again, that just everyone is going to be welcome to come there. But there's also the wheat and the tares principle, that they're going to gather the good into vessels, but they're going to cast the bad away. And we've got to remember that there is going to be that choice, that choosing who wants to stay in that heaven place and who maybe isn't going to make that choice. And that is also part of what heaven is. So it's just fun to look. This is a chapter that describes heaven and what heaven would be like and who is welcome there.
And this connection too, that the sower is going to sow the seed on every ground. Even if it is the wayside ground, he's still going to try. If it's this ground or that ground, all the fish, every kind, it's just like...
And all the seed is going to be good.
Right.
No one is going to get bad seed. So we just have to decide, how wide do we want to open our heart? How do we want to prepare our ground? And what's that going to look like for us right now? So that's the invitation for this week.
Okay, there you go.
We hope you loved your drawings. Maybe hang them up somewhere where everyone can see them all week long. We want to see them.
See you next week.